Vinnie Politan, thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And I'm going to begin this hour with the disclaimer I need to do every time I do this story. I have no agenda. My only agenda is the truth, is finding out the truth about what happened to Boston police officer John O'Keefe. I haven't taken sides. I have an open mind. I need to see and hear all the evidence because this case is unlike any other case that I've covered in my career here at Court TV. Let's begin with the defendant. Karen Reed was back in court today. Again, on her way in, all the supporters are there. She's accused of running over her police officer boyfriend on purpose and leaving him to die in the snow. She claims she is the victim of a police cover-up and frame job, where they framed her for the murder after someone at the house she was dropping him off at had actually killed him in an after-hours party after Karen and John had gone bar hopping that night. That's the setup of the story. So today in court, some important stuff was happening. 2 defense motions were argued in court. A motion to dismiss the indictment. This is huge because they're laying out a lot of the evidence as to why the indictment itself should go away and a jury should not even hear this case. Then there was a motion to disqualify and sanction the Norfolk District Attorney Michael Morrissey. Now, the court has reserved ruling on both of these issues after the arguments today, but I will tell you, they are both long shots just because of the nature of them. It is rare that a judge will dismiss an indictment, and it is rare that a judge will disqualify and sanction a district attorney. But like I said in the beginning, this case is unlike any case I've covered in my career at Court TV. So let's start with that motion to dismiss. We're talking about crucial evidence here that was discussed during this motion, and it begins with the Google search that was made by Jennifer McCabe. She's one of the people that is in the house that Karen Reed said John O'Keefe went into, okay? Also argued were evidence regarding John O'Keefe's actual cause of death. How did he die? You know, was he run over by a car? Or was he beaten inside the home that Karen Reed says she dropped him off at? So beginning with the Google search. The Google search is how long to die in the cold, right? And when you look, and it says hose long because it was misspelled in the Google search itself. But here you can see the protesters know. They know what the big issue in this case is that this alleged search was done hours before John O'Keefe was found dead in the snow on the front lawn of this home. So if the search is done at 2:30 in the morning, then there's no way that Karen Reed could have committed the murder. It would have been someone inside. Why else would you search how long to die in the cold at that time of the early morning hours? So Alan Jackson, the attorney, big-time attorney, right? Flying in from LA, representing Karen Reed here, made the argument today about that search. Take a listen.
This is not in our papers, but obviously it's a complete and probably the most obvious distortion of the facts. The Commonwealth suppressed one of the most obvious pieces of exculpatory evidence in the entire case, and that was a piece of evidence that they know torpedoes their entire case and their theory of this case. And that's Jennifer McCabe's Google search at 2:27 a.m., how long to die in cold. They had her phone at the time of the grand jury. They had her complete extraction of that phone at the time of the grand jury. They had a Celebrite report, Your Honor, at the time of the grand jury, and yet they did not present this evidence. They claim, oh, well, we didn't have the right version of the Celebrite software. That's on them. That's not our fault, certainly not Ms. Reed's fault. That's their fault. Get the right software. If you're going to bring this case, do it the right way. They say their argument is, well, we just didn't have the right software, so we didn't have the information. That's not true. They did have the information. It was sitting in her phone. They just didn't do their job in extracting. And should the Commonwealth once again stand up in some sort of desperate pitch to dispute that time and this critical evidence, the court should note the following. Not only does the Celebrite report confirm the search and the time of that search, not only do our experts confirm the search and the time of that search, but now a Quantico-trained special agent with the FBI's Regional Computer Forensic Lab, in other words, the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation, also specifically confirms that that search was made on Jennifer McCabe's phone, and it was made on or before 2:27:40 a.m. on January 29th, 2022. That fact, Your Honor, is no longer open for debate.
Compelling argument, right? And you're using the FBI. The defense is using the FBI, unlike any case I've ever covered here. Now, you have to remember, at this point, there is a federal investigation of the state investigators in this case. So the feds are looking at the state investigators, and that information has now been given to both sides. So that's a compelling argument. But now let's hear the state, the prosecutor's response to that regarding this Google search.
Lastly, we get to the Google search, and I would agree with counsel in the sense that it's really no longer open for debate, but I'm not really sure why we're still even talking about this or why this is still a topic that they're pushing. Essentially, what we have is, yes, what counsel mentions is there is one expert who was given 2 extractions, presumably provided by defense counsel, that indicates from that particular FBI expert that the searches were done at 2-something in the morning. What counsel neglects to sort of raise and stress with the court is that there's a separate, and I forget exactly what it stands for, but an RCFL analysis of the phone in which through both Axiom and through Celebrite, and that conclusion of that expert is that the searches occurred when Ms. McCabe testified they occurred because the defendant asked her to conduct those searches at 6:23 and 6:24 in the morning. Really, the argument stops at the point of it's not, we didn't do our job to get the Celebrite version that shows that information did not exist at the time of the grand jury. So I'm not really sure how the Commonwealth is supposed to run something through a Celebrite version that isn't in existence at the time the grand jury is conducted.
So you have a discrepancy now between experts and trying to figure out information from a phone when a search was made. So to me, this issue is still up in the air. It's way up in the air. Both sides are convinced of their side, but hey, you've got to convince us. You know, when I say us, I mean the jury ultimately. Now, let's talk about the cause of death here. Some of the images that we've seen of John O'Keefe's arm, we've seen some of the injuries on the arm. The defense is saying that these are consistent with a dog attacking him inside the house, a dog that has been sent away somewhere. There's also a video of Karen Reed driving the car. And did she make contact here? Is this how she damaged the back of her car? Or did she damage the back of the car when she backed over and ran over John O'Keefe? Let's take a listen to the prosecutor now explaining the circumstances of John O'Keefe's death.
There is no suggestion of a third-party culprit, no suggestion of cover-up of evidence, no suggestion from the 13 civilians' witnesses' testimony that we have received, or transcripts of that testimony. All of them confirmed that Mr. O'Keefe never entered 34 Fairview Road. All of it was absolutely no animosity between the individuals at the Waterfall Bar or at 34 Fairview residence. There was no fight, there was no dog attack, there was no eyewitness to the circumstances that led to Mr. O'Keefe's death.
Okay, so now the defense, they're going to use the federal investigation once again, and an FBI expert. Take a listen.
Now Mr. Lally has in his possession another thing from the feds that we didn't have access to. The federal investigators hired, independent of us, we had no idea, and independent of the Commonwealth, hired a professional reconstructionist, 3 PhDs, to look into exactly this issue. Did Karen Reed's car, did her SUV make contact with John O'Keefe? And their conclusion to a person was his injuries were inconsistent with the damage on the car. The damage on the car was inconsistent with having made contact with John O'Keefe's body. In other words, the car didn't hit him, and he wasn't hit by the car. Period, full stop. That's their independent expert, not ours.
Okay, now, as you know, there's been this incredible groundswell of support for Karen Read. It's really been led by this man. He's been on the show. There he is, the Turtle Boy and his Turtle Riders. He's a blogger. He calls himself a journalist. He calls himself a YouTuber. However you want to define him, he has sort of spearheaded this support for Karen Read. But in the meantime, he's now been arrested and is facing charges for allegedly intimidating witnesses. Here he is being released in one of the times he got locked up. The story is, again, unlike any case, trial I've covered in my history at Court TV. So I am fascinated by the support for Karen Read. I understand, I think, from our discussions with Turtle Boy, where his support comes from. And he's covering the story, and he was covering true crime stories, and became convinced that Karen Read was innocent. But how about the rest of those folks? The rest of those folks. Well, let me bring in our guest. Special guest joining us tonight from Wilmington, Massachusetts, avid Karen Read supporter, and apparently the man who funded the Karen Read billboard truck, Nick Rocco, is with us tonight. Nick, thanks so much for joining us.
How you doing, Vinny? Thanks for having me on.
Good. So everyone knows there's a slight delay, so he's hearing me in a delay, so I'm just going to wait for Nick's responses. So, Nick, do you have any connection to Turtle Boy? Do you have any connection to Karen Read?
No, other than getting involved in this case, I have no personal connection to anyone involved.
So what is it? Why? Why would you spend your own hard-earned money, because I know you work hard, for the billboards? Why would you spend the time to support an accused cop killer?
Well, first, I do want to say that all these mobile billboards, the billboard that was put up in front of Gillette Stadium, it did not come out of my pocket. We have a Facebook group that basically funds everything. The signs that you see there as well, someone in the group makes them. Everyone makes their own signs. We're definitely not paid to be there. A lot of us take work off to be there. And at this point, it's become a passion to a lot of people because the evidence that's being provided by the defense is backed up with receipts. And it almost seems like every time that something new, groundbreaking is brought forward, the Commonwealth always decides to be like, look over there, oh, look, she kissed him, or this person's doing that. And, if you look at the facts of what's being presented, to me, it's clear as day. She is 100% innocent.
Now, Nick, there are thousands and thousands of people I've interacted with online and have met at courthouses that are like Court TV fans and true crime buffs, etc. And I know that they get connected to cases. Is this the first time you've been connected to a case, or has this always been something where you're talking about justice and looking at what you believe to be injustices?
No, I've never been involved in anything like this. This is a very powerful movement. Say each and every person that you see at these protests and at these rallies truly believes that, this could be them. And I think that's why you see so many people come out, because, again, presented, how could you say she's guilty? There's lots of lying going on, withholding evidence going on. I've seen a few cases, and I've never seen something like this.
So, Nick, let me ask you now. Turtle Boy under indictment, charges. He's got to battle his own legal battles while still supporting Karen Read. Have you been charged with anything? Have you been questioned? Have you been confronted by law enforcement or prosecutors?
Actually, yes. Me and 9 other people, and one of them at the time was a minor, were holding signs on a public sidewalk in downtown Canton, across the street from a specific pizza shop. We just happened to be because it's the main road down there. And we got summons to court for a magistrate hearing. witness intimidation on a police officer for not giving our names, and then also picketing a witness because we were apparently too close or within eyesight, is what they told us, of a witness at the time. Now, we did have this magistrate hearing back in January, and we were told that we would have an answer within a week, and we're going on 2 months now with no answer to if there was probable cause or not.
Has this deterred you from showing up? Has it altered your behavior in any way?
I mean, my behavior was never bad to begin with. It's not illegal to hold a sign. It's not illegal to speak what you want. It has not stopped me from going to the court cases. I would say I don't go to Canton anymore because I feel like there may be a target on people's backs if they do protest there. But other than that, I wouldn't say I have anything to worry about because we're just there to support her realistically.
All right, let's talk about the victim in all of this, John O'Keefe. What message do you have for his family? I mean, they've lost this. John is gone forever. Officer John O'Keefe is gone. What message do you have for his family?
Absolutely. You know, through this whole thing, I'm sure you've seen it as well. There is two sides to this middle, and it almost seems like no matter what side you are on, to the other person, you're going to be wrong. I want to see justice for John O'Keefe. Obviously, something very tragic happened inside that house. And like the FBI had said, you know, the reconstructionist had said that his damages do not match a vehicle striking him. And I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. I really hope one day justice is going to come very soon. And I really do hope we can get there soon because this case is turning very messy.
Let me ask you, Nick, is there anything, there's going to be a trial, all right? This thing is headed for the trial. Looks like it's going to happen in April. Is there anything that you could hear during the course of the trial, because we haven't heard all the evidence yet, that could change your mind about Karen Read?
Vinny, there's not much that we really haven't heard. I feel like, yes, the Commonwealth has discovery, but, you know, which officer was handling that evidence when it was put in? To be honest, the only way that I would ever believe that Karen Read did this is if they got the video camera footage from across the street or from the ring camera footage that was potentially on 34 Fairview Road. Now, if you can provide cameras on that street, if you can provide the video evidence and show me that she did it, you know, not just finding taillight on 5 separate undocumented visits and just be like, oh yeah, we found it. That I don't buy personally. But so the only thing that I would ever change my mind is if you showed me a video of Karen Read throwing the car in reverse at 24 miles per hour and striking John. But that video doesn't exist because that didn't happen.
All right, final question, Nick. If I head up there in April when this trial happens, what's the scene going to be like outside the courthouse? What's the scene going to be like inside the courtroom?
So today, they limited the amount of people that could go inside. There was about 60 people that were allowed to go inside. April, the weather's going to be nicer, Vinny. I mean, you see people out there on days like today or like frigid cold in February. You're going to see more people coming out in April. And considering it's going to be an everyday thing, you're going to have people out there, I can guarantee you, all day until she walks in that courtroom, until she walks out of that courtroom. You're going to have people outside.
Well, Nick, I appreciate you coming on tonight. This is a very unusual case. I just have to correct one thing. You said it was frigid cold. I believe it was wicked cold, right?
Wicked cold, that's right.
I'm right.
Wicked cold.
I was waiting for that. All right, Nick, appreciate it. Thanks so much. And perhaps if I'm up there, I will run into you because apparently you're going to be outside the courthouse with the rest of the folks. Unbelievable. All right, ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, It's time to hear from our think tank. Is there enough evidence for prosecutors? Is there enough evidence to prosecute someone else? Is it a stronger case against the police or Karen Reed? That's next.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan
In every story, in every trial, every case, there's at least two sides to it.
to dive into the latest
Oh my God.
and breaking true crime stories
This was a very targeted, very personal attack.
inside
My whole life depends on it.
and outside of the courtroom.
She's a psychopath.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Saturday morning, 10/9 Central. Only on Court TV.
In his own words, D.A. Morrissey revealed he has an interest in this case that goes beyond the interests of justice. He revealed that he knew that his office was being unfairly targeted and investigated. And it doesn't matter if his belief or knowledge was right or wrong. It's only important that he believes it. And this means he has a personal interest in getting Karen Reed convicted. If he can use whatever means he has at his disposal to convict her, and he succeeds, that would vindicate him and harm the federal investigation of his office. On the other hand, if she's found not guilty, as we expect she will be, he knows that he and his office will remain in the crosshairs of the federal investigation. And it's important to note, Your Honor, both sides have been made aware multiple times that as we have this hearing today, that federal investigation is still open.
So there's a federal investigation of the investigators in this case, right? And the defense is using some of that information from that federal investigation, including an accident reconstruction expert, someone who looked at the Google search. But let's break through that for a second and just take a step back. This is the way I want you to look at this case, right? Because the prosecution is making an allegation against Karen Reed, but Karen Reed is making an allegation against all the people in that house. If you were a prosecutor and you had the choice of which case to bring to trial, which one would you take to trial? Would you go to trial against the people in the house or against Karen Reed? Where is there more evidence in this case? I get it, it's a tough case to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Reasonable doubt is just raining all over the place. They can still win, but there's a lot of opportunity for that reasonable doubt. But look at it a different way, because they're saying, not only did she not do it, we know who did it. And they're right in that house and the evidence is there. So where's there more evidence? Let's bring the think tank. Joining us tonight in Seattle, Washington, trial attorney, fellow of the American College of Trial Lawyers, Ann Bremner. Also with us in West Palm Beach, Florida, where it's always warm. Trial attorney, former police lieutenant Rick King. And in Cleveland, Ohio, retired judge, former prosecutor, and judicial fellow at the National Judicial College, Judge Gail Byers. Great to see everyone. Ann Bremner, you're a former prosecutor. Which case would you rather prosecute? The case against Karen Reed or the case against the people in the house?
I would say Karen Reed, hands down.
Why?
All the evidence points to her, and you think about, who else has a motive in this case? You've got the physical evidence. I don't care about her supporters. I mean, some of those people in there, we've all seen that in trials where they can actually be more of a hindrance than a help to a defense, at least for me as a defense attorney. But I think that, everything in this case, she might have a slick lawyer and everything else, but it points to her. Because here's the question, who else would have done this? Who else had a motive? Who else has evidence pointed strong? Karen Reed or the people in the house? Karen Reed.
All right, Rick King, I won't ask you to be the prosecutor, but as a defense attorney, okay? As a defense attorney, who would you rather defend against charges, Karen Reed or the people in the house?
The 13 people in the house, because there's 13 people they got to put a case on. I mean, they got to pick every single person in there had to play a part somehow, and they have to figure out who did what, how they did it, and put a case on all of them. So for me, give me them 13 people every day.
All right, Judge Gail Byers, you've sat on the bench, but you've also been a prosecutor. Which case is stronger, right? Because it's clear allegations going from one side to the other. By the way, her attorney, Alan Jackson, was an amazing prosecutor in Los Angeles. Prosecuted the guy with the funny hair, Phil Spector. Phil Spector, the legendary music producer. He won that case. Okay, so Judge, who would you... If you want, you got two files in the office, which one are you grabbing to run down to the courtroom to begin the prosecution?
Let me tell you, it is, I think, monumentally difficult to try a case with 13 defendants. It is very difficult. Now, as a prosecutor, we all know, usually you do a little bit of wheeling and dealing. So the first to squeal gets the deal. However, if you only have one person like Karen Reed, where there seems to be a mountain of evidence that points to this person in particular, there may be something to be said about prosecuting that case singularly, as opposed to dealing with 13 defendants on the other side, where any number of things can go wrong or sideways. So I'd take Karen Reed all day long.
Okay. So that's looking at this, I think, from a perspective of, okay, where's there more evidence? Now let's talk about what's going to happen in April, which is a trial. And obviously trials, it's about burden of proof for the prosecution beyond any and all reasonable doubt. What are your thoughts there, Ann Bremner? Is this case reigning reasonable doubt, like I said?
I don't know if it's like showering like reasonable doubt. It could be drizzling like we have here in Seattle, or a little bit of rain. But, I still come back to the fact that when you've got the evidence, that she's got the motive, that he's a cop, doesn't matter. There's nobody else. It's not a case you can say that other people did it definitively. I think that she's got problems in this case. And I just don't know how they get around the evidence in this case by pointing to other people, especially when.
Well, I think the key evidence that they rely upon is the tail light fragments,
right.
The DNA, the cocktail glass that was in the bumper, the tail light fragments that are on his body. Now, Rick King, I've listened to Turtle Boy, I've read papers, and it looks like, and I've listened to Alan Jackson, it seems like there would have to be some planting of the evidence in this case.
Right.
So a jury would have to buy that, Rick. They'd have to buy that.
Right.
But the beauty of reasonable doubt for defense attorneys who have it so easy because they don't have the burden, Rick. No burden, zero burden, right? But like to raise a reasonable doubt is just like, that's like lifting a tiny little dumbbell, right? A tiny little dumbbell is reasonable doubt, whereas you got to deadlift a whole bunch, the big plates, to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt, Rick. So what are your thoughts?
So when you talked about this initially, you talked about the FBI investigating the investigators in this case, and there's things that are coming out. Like, since when does the defense lawyer get to flaunt the FBI's results in a case? That's huge. And as that investigation develops and you find out what was presented at that grand jury or what evidence they have there, that can only help Karen Reed in this case, the way that it's coming out now. Now, that all may change, and there may be some different evidence that comes out eventually that we don't know. But as I sit here today, to know that as a defense lawyer, I get to promptly put in front of the jury the testimony of an FBI agent who is standing behind my theory of the case, I'll take that all day.
Judge Gail Byers, this trial, I think it's going to happen in April. It's unless they win this motion to dismiss, which I doubt, or there's some unexpected delay, the judge wants to try this case. What are your thoughts about reasonable doubt for Karen Reed?
So, Vinnie, first, I agree with you. I sincerely doubt the defense will win their motion to dismiss the indictment wholesale. And because the bar is so low for an indictment, which is probable cause, I think that is probably the strongest likelihood for why that indictment won't be dismissed. Because remember, you only have to, show, was a crime committed? Is this likely the person that committed the crime? That's just to get the indictment. And as you said, once you get to a petit jury, or the jury that we are used to seeing in a jury trial, you've got a heavier lift. And I actually think that, there is an awful lot of reasonable doubt that keeps trickling out. And what's more, if I were the prosecution, I might begin to get a little bit concerned about jury tainting or tainting the jury pool, given all of the media exposure that this case has gotten. Because remember, those same people that are standing outside are perhaps some of the same people, or they're connected in the same town to some of the same people who are going to be picked to sit in this jury. And I think very few are going to be able to say they've not seen or heard or know something about this case, and that they're completely objective and have formulated no opinion whatsoever. And all you need is one person. That's all I ever say. And I think that the defense is angling for that one person in these pretrial motions, and they are setting it up for the win before they ever do their opening statements.
Like I said, it's so much easier for the defense, Rick. You just need one. You just need one. It's not like the prosecution. We need all 12. You just need one, and you say, yeah, we won the case. All right, think tank with us. They're not going anywhere. Up next.
Scott Peterson, with the help of the LA Innocence Project, is once again trying to get the double murderer released. This time, they say, new evidence includes a torched van.
The district attorney's office has known for 4 months which specific items of discovery we are requesting. We gave them references to Bates pages. We gave them references to where in the police reports the items we're requesting are referred to. We were very, very specific. We spent a lot of time trying to suss out what frankly are very alarming deficiencies in the discovery that was provided to the defense at the time of trial. Those are the items we're requesting. I agree it should not take 180 days for them to locate those items and provide them to us. The defense was entitled to those at the time of trial. Mr. Peterson has been waiting 20 years to find some of these police reports and audio recordings and video recordings that should have been provided.
The LA Innocence Project now representing convicted double murderer Scott Peterson. There he was appearing via Zoom today. I don't know what he's doing with his eyes there, but look at his hair. Slick back, and if you can almost see, he's got a ponytail, folks. He's got a ponytail. He's sporting the point. Remember, he's off death row now, so he's back in Gen Pop. So I guess that's what all the kids in Gen Pop are doing now with the ponytails. I mean, it's been 20 years. He should be out playing golf with his son, Connor, but he's not, because he murdered Connor right before he was born, when he murdered his wife, Lacey Peterson, but is still claiming his innocence. And the key piece of evidence, apparently, this new evidence that the LA Innocence Project is talking about, is a van, a burnt-out van, a van that had been set on fire in the airport district early Christmas morning, December 25th, 2002, just hours after Lacey Peterson was discovered missing. The van was set on fire while parked in an alley. In his examination of the vehicle in this contest, he saw that the mattress in the rear passenger area had visible red-brown staining on a portion that was unburned. He recalled that a presumptive test using luminol or a similar chemical was conducted on a cutting from the stained area of the mattress, and it showed to be presumptive positive for the presence of blood. So we're talking about a van. We got some pictures of it that was a torched van in Modesto, about a mile away from Lacey's house. I'm going to call it Lacey's house. You also have pictures of the interior of this van as well, and they're talking about I guess a mattress or a piece of a mattress there that they want to have tested for DNA. This is what this LA Innocence Project is focusing on. We've got a hearing on a motion to seal April 16th, a hearing on DNA testing motion May 29th, and a hearing on a motion for discovery July 15th. So this thing's moving forward. Let's bring back in our think tank, Ann Bremner, Rick King, Judge Gail Byers. And I'm going to save you for last on this one, because we were there for all this. Rick, what are your thoughts? What do you need to give this guy another trial, a new trial, to have this double murder conviction tossed?
I'm going to need that DNA to come back to the Lacey or something like that. Anything short of that right now, I think that we're just grasping. And let me tell you, I am a fan of the Innocence Project and the work that they do. I had a college classmate of mine participated when we were in school, and she was involved in the exoneration of someone. And so I believe in the work that they do. And however, in this case, there's just so much on the other side, you know?
Yeah, there is a lot on the other side, and I'm not sure if this particular Innocence Project is connected to the others. I've heard mixed stories about that.
Okay.
Judge Gail Byers, should that DNA be tested, first of all? Should they get it? And should that DNA be tested from this torched van?
I actually think, Vinnie, we're 2 decades out. There was a considerable amount of evidence that was presented against Scott Peterson that resulted in his conviction. But that being said, I think that if there is any evidence that is potentially exculpatory that should have been disclosed at the time of trial, even if it was 20 years ago, then yes, it should be tested. But anything short of actually connecting that DNA to the victim or that baby is worth no more than the court's time, the amount of time it takes to slam the gavel and say dismissed and march everybody out the courtroom. But I think that it is worth the exercise to at least determine and exclude that, because otherwise, again, we don't build faith in this justice system if we have systems where prosecutors potentially withhold important evidence that defendants do have a right to have, even if that doesn't result in their exoneration.
Ann Bremner, what are we obligated to do if they test that DNA and it comes back connecting to Laci Peterson? Do we have to ourselves file briefs to have Scott Peterson set free?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think that's such a remote possibility. It's almost laughable. I mean, you and I were at that trial, Vinny. All the evidence pointed to him. I mean, he was out there looking over San Francisco Bay for the bodies to come up with a tracking device on him. He's trying to flee the border, down at Torrey Pines with a different hairdo and a Viagra and socks in his car and his brother's ID.
And a bunch of cash, and a big stack of cash. By the way, the hair, no, he didn't dye his hair. He jumped in the pool. It was the chlorine, remember, Ann?
Oh, yeah, that's what he said, right. I mean, and he's got the girlfriend, Amber, and he's talking to her from the Eiffel Tower when he's at the memorial. I mean, everything. I mean, it was just outrageous, just outrageous. We sat through that. He was so guilty. He had a smirk on his face the whole time, and the jurors said, we just want to wipe that smirk off his face. And they did, and they gave him the death penalty 20 years ago. So now you look back at this with an innocent project saying, we're going to take this up. I just find it reprehensible. Yeah. Somebody needs to look at that case. Look at that case. Look at what happened.
And the theory is this van is involved in some local burglaries, and she witnessed something, so they abducted her, put her in the van, killed her in the van, and then, I don't know, right away dumped her in the bay, or waited until they found out where Scott Peterson was so they could frame the manure salesman from Modesto. All right. Fasten your seatbelts. Up next.
In tonight's Tank Takes, rats are getting into the evidence lockers in New Orleans and eating the marijuana seized by cops. And tonight we're wondering, are these the first rats to help criminals?
First parents in America to be charged in a mass school shooting.
Involuntary manslaughter and 4 counts of it.
The gun recovered from the shooter was the same gun that was purchased by his father.
Jennifer was found guilty.
Who is responsible for storing the gun?
Now the school shooter's father is set to stand trial.
My husband is.
The school shooter dad trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back. Time for tonight's Tank Takes, where we take a look at the world of crime and justice and those stories that don't fit in the rest of the show, but they fit very well right here at the end. Still with us, our think tank tonight, Ann Bremner, Rick King, and Judge Gail Byers. Are you ready?
Ready.
Let's get to our first one, rats with roaches. So down in New Orleans, apparently in the evidence room where they keep some of the marijuana that they seized, they're having some problems. Headquarters was built back in like 1968 with an infestation of rats. And apparently the rats are getting into the evidence and gobbling up the marijuana. So now the evidence is like disappearing. And I'm wondering, are these the first rats to actually help criminals instead of ratting out their friends? Ann Bremner.
Yeah, I think they are, but I think they need my cats in there. I got a couple right there, and Jimmy ready to go.
Just get a couple cats in there. Rick King, did this ever happen to you when you were an officer?
Sure, the rats are stealing the weed.
Yeah.
That's like the dog ate my homework.
Yes.
Judge, good insight there from Rick King, ladies and gentlemen. Judge, your thoughts tonight about the rats?
These rats sound like the worst band, like the Reefer Rats, right? Doesn't sound like a bad rock group. But they are presenting the best possible motion to suppress possible for anyone. So there is no evidence. So
The
this
rats,
is the best suppression argument.
The rats are now in the chain of custody. By the way, I think one of these rats escaped and went to New York years ago and became the pizza rat because he had the munchies. All right, next story. I'm calling this one calculated theft. Two Dallas men, apparently suspects in a theft spree that saw thousands of dollars worth of calculators, old-fashioned calculators taken from Target stores back in February. So here's my question. If they're stealing all the calculators, can the think tank solve this equation without a calculator? 6 divided by 2 times 3 plus 1. Is it 10, 12, or 8? Ann Bremner.
Oh, you should call me first. I have no idea.
No idea. She passes. Rick King.
10.
Judge Gail Byers.
10. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10.
Let's reveal the answer. Correct. Great job. All right, let's get to our final story of the night. That'll be the last math question.
Thank God.
I'm calling this one traffic.
And I'm a lawyer, not a mathematician.
That's it.
Traffic flock. In Cleveland, Ohio, 2 officers were nervously laughing and run away. They're making a traffic stop when all of a sudden, a flock of turkeys. Let's take a look. So here they are, you know. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Hey, what? They are shooing the officers away from this traffic stop. What is going on in Cleveland, Ohio? Unbelievable. I'm wondering tonight, Rick King, are these the first turkeys to help criminals?
That's the first time I've seen a turkey do some stuff like that, man. Good thing they didn't have acorns, though. That's the important part.
Ann Bremner, the turkeys.
Yeah, I think they're very helpful to criminals. I mean, they're scared. They're scaring the cops. So you gotta love it. Look at the look on their faces. Run away, the turkeys.
Judge, we have 5 seconds. Last word tonight.
Don't put anything past us Buckeyes, but I want to see those guys run interference on some other people who get stopped by the cops.
Ann Bremner, Rick King, Judge Gail Byers, great job as always. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon. Before we go tonight, folks, take a look at your screens. This is important. We have a missing child, Chloe Janes, just 15 years old. Chloe's missing out of Lakewood, Colorado since March 7th. If you see her, pick up the phone, 1-800-THE-LOST, 911, or the Lakewood Police Department in Colorado. Let's see if we can get Chloe to a safe place tonight. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for watching. Have a great night. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.